Mystery at Glenelg Beach. The 1966 vanishing of the Beaumont children, Adelaide, Australia. There are mysteries that time erases and those it refuses to let go. On a sunlit morning in 1966, three siblings, Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont, walked onto the sands of Glenelg Beach in Adelaide. They never walked back. What began as a family outing became a legend. A mystery so deep it still haunts Australia's collective memory nearly 60 years later. Police remain baffled as to how three children could disappear without a trace. No footprints, no struggle, no evidence of where they went or who took them. Only whispers carried by the wind, of a man in a blue swimsuit, of a bakery visit, of strange letters years later. This is not just a story of disappearance. It's a mystery that reshaped a nation's innocence. As we unravel the evidence, theories, and chilling coincidences, we'll explore the question that still echoes in every Australian's mind. Did the sands of Glenelg swallow the truth? Or has it been buried in plain sight all along? Before we begin our descent into the unknown, don't forget to subscribe to @Mystery Vault 80. Your curiosity fuels our journey through the unsolved, the hidden, and the inexplicable. Like, share, and comment below what you believe happened that day. Every theory, every perspective brings us closer to understanding the mysteries the world has chosen to forget. Mystery at Glenelg Beach. The vanishing of the Beaumont children, a summer like no other. The morning was bright, warm, and full of joy, a day that promised only sunshine. It was January 26th, 1966, Australia Day, and Glenelg Beach shimmered with life. Families stretched across the sand, umbrellas dotted the shoreline, and the laughter of children filled the air. Among them were three siblings, Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont. They lived only a few minutes away and knew the area well. For them, Glenelg was their playground, safe, familiar, and full of wonder. At around 10 a.m., they left home, barefoot, holding coins for bus fare and treats. They were expected home by noon. They never came back. At first, no one noticed. After all, it was common for children to stay late at the beach on summer days. But when Nancy Beaumont realized the time, the sun already dipping toward the horizon, unease turned to dread. She searched the streets, the bus stop, the beach. Nothing. When Jim returned home, the two scoured every corner of Glenelg until darkness fell. That night, a report was filed, 3 missing children. No one could have guessed it would become Australia's most haunting mystery. Authorities are continuing the search for 3 missing children from the suburb of Somerton Park. As the city slept, search teams combed the beaches with torches. But every trail ended where the water met the sand. Witnesses came forward, fragments of memory describing the children with a man. Tall, fit, smiling. A stranger who seemed familiar. Some said he helped them play. Others said he led them away. Who was he? And why did no one ever see him again? By morning, all of Australia knew their names. Jane, Arnna, Grant. The case spread like wildfire, gripping the nation's soul. Glenelg Beach, once a place of laughter, became a shrine of unanswered questions. In the heart of paradise, something unspeakable had happened. And as the years passed, one thing remained certain. The children had not simply vanished. Someone, somewhere, had taken them. It began as a day of celebration. It ended as the birth of a mystery that would haunt Australia forever. The day they never returned. It was supposed to be a short trip. A few hours of sunshine, laughter, and sandcastles. But as the afternoon light began to fade, the Beaumont house grew eerily still. Nancy glanced at the clock. 3 p.m., still no sign of the children. By 4 p.m., she was pacing the living room. By 5, she was standing by the window, hoping to see 3 familiar faces appear at the corner of the street. They never did. When Jim returned home from work, his wife's face told him everything. No words, just fear. Together, they drove to Glenelg Beach. The evening air had cooled, and the once crowded sands now lay quiet. They walked for hours, calling, searching, begging for any clue. The tide rolled in, erasing footprints that might have told the story. At 7:30 p.m., police were alerted. The first reports described the children as likely delayed. No one imagined they were facing a mystery that would confound generations. As officers began their search, they found nothing. No clothing, no towels, no lunch money, no trace. It was as if the Beaumont children had been lifted out of existence. By morning, Glenelg was crawling with searchers. Helicopters swept the shore, boats cut through the waves, divers searched the seafloor. The people of Adelaide, a city known for its safety, watched in horror. The only clue came from fragments of memory. Witnesses recalling a tall, fit man with light hair seen talking to the children. He smiled. They smiled back. He helped them dig in the sand, played with them, almost as if he knew them. But who was he? No one could name him. No one could find him. Some say he was a local. Others believe he was a traveler. But one fact remains. When the Beaumont children vanished, so did he. As the sun rose over Adelaide, the whispers began. Had they drowned? Were they taken? Or had something even stranger happened beneath the glare of that perfect summer sky? That was the day the Beaumont mystery began. A day that marked the moment when ordinary life in Australia changed forever. The city that stopped breathing. By dawn on January 27, 1966, the city of Adelaide had changed. A strange silence hung over the suburbs, a tension that no one could quite describe. Children were kept indoors. Beachgoers hesitated to unpack their towels. The Beaumont disappearance had already taken on a life of its own, spreading across the country like wildfire. 3 children vanish. Parents beg for answers. Where are the Beaumonts? Within 24 hours, every Australian household knew their names: Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont. The siblings whose innocent summer outing had become the nation's darkest mystery. We have officers and volunteers searching every possible location. The children were last seen near the Glenelg foreshore at approximately noon. More than 200 officers joined the search that morning. Helicopters scanned dunes. Divers combed the rocky coves. Police dogs scoured parks and drains. But every lead ended the same way, with silence. The police began interviewing hundreds of beach visitors. One account stood out: the man in the blue swimsuit. Witnesses described him as tanned, fit, in his 30s. Friendly. He played with the children, helped them dig a hole, even gave them coins for snacks. To the casual eye, he seemed like a family friend. But when police searched records, no such man existed. No witnesses could trace where he came from or where he went. Officers began to suspect something chilling. This was not a random disappearance. It was deliberate, methodical. As the investigation intensified, the media descended on Glenelg. Reporters trailed the Beaumonts. Cameras flashed. Headlines grew more sensational by the hour. Mystery man may hold key to children's fate. Sightings across the state. Police chase leads. For Jim and Nancy, hope began to mix with unbearable dread. They answered the same questions 100 times. They watched as strangers picked apart their lives, their parenting, their decisions. Even worse, hoax calls began pouring in. People claimed to have seen the children, heard their voices, or spotted them in far-off towns. Each lead raised their hopes, only to crush them again. The nation became obsessed. Newspapers published maps of Glenelg Beach, marking the children's last known movements. Families began locking their doors earlier. Parents stopped letting kids play alone outside. The Beaumont disappearance had changed Australia. It marked the end of innocence, the moment when every parent began to look over their shoulder. Police began exploring darker theories: abduction, trafficking, even ritual involvement. But with no ransom, no witnesses, and no bodies, the truth felt just out of reach. For the first time in modern Australian history, a single case brought an entire nation to a halt. The city of Adelaide stopped breathing, waiting for answers that never came. And while police chased every lead, one question echoed through every home. How could 3 children simply vanish in broad daylight, without a trace? Echoes in the sand, false leads, and fractured hope. Despite extensive search efforts, police have yet to uncover any solid evidence in the disappearance of the Beaumont children. Public concern continues to grow. By the second week, the search for Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont had grown into one of the largest manhunts in Australian history. Yet every step forward seemed to end in the same haunting silence. Detectives sifted through hundreds of reports, supposed sightings, overheard whispers, and grainy photographs. Each one offered a spark of hope, only to burn out just as quickly. Scene shift, the Glenelg Mirage. A woman claimed she saw 3 children boarding a bus to the city. Another insisted she'd seen them at a corner shop miles away. By mid-February, the police files had swollen with confusion, leads that led nowhere. Still, every false report carried weight. For the Beaumont family, hope became both a lifeline and a weapon. Nancy Beaumont would later recall how every ringing telephone made her heart stop. Was this the call that would bring her children home, or another cruel lie? The mysterious man last seen with the children became the center of the case. Sketch artists released composite drawings. For weeks, the country hunted for a face, but none of the suspects fit. Some even claimed the man was a local delivery worker. Others believed he was a transient stranger. But every trail led back to the same desolate beach. And each passing day, the sand seemed to swallow more than just evidence. It swallowed the truth. By March, the media had turned the tragedy into a spectacle. Headlines screamed theories, cults, kidnappers, foreign spies. Talk shows debated the parents' role. Strangers mailed letters claiming psychic visions. One self-proclaimed clairvoyant claimed to know where the children's bodies lay. And police, desperate for answers, followed her map. They found nothing. Just empty dunes, the same whispering wind, and the endless sound of waves. Scene shift, the family's breaking point. Narrator, somber, slow. By April, Jim and Nancy Beaumont had stopped giving interviews. Their faces, once filled with fragile hope, now carried quiet despair. They moved through their home like ghosts. Jane's room untouched, Arnna's doll still sitting by the window. The children's school books remained neatly stacked on the kitchen table. The world outside kept spinning. But for the Beaumonts, time had frozen on that hot January afternoon. With no suspects, no evidence, and no bodies, darker theories began to rise. Some investigators quietly whispered about organized rings. Others about powerful figures capable of silencing the truth. In hushed tones, Adelaide became known as the city with secrets. But the deeper detectives dug, the more they realized. Every clue they followed seemed to vanish, just like the children themselves. The beach that once held laughter had become a graveyard of unanswered questions. Every wave that washed ashore carried the same echo. Where are they? And though months had passed, one thing remained constant. The mystery wasn't fading, it was only beginning to grow. If this story moves you, don't just scroll away. Subscribe, like, and share, because every story deserves to be heard. And together, we can keep these lost voices alive. Your support helps us uncover the truth, one mystery at a time. Shadows of suspects, the faces behind the fear. By mid-1966, the search for the Beaumont children had transformed into something far more complex. A maze of suspicion, rumor, and fear. With no physical evidence, investigators began to turn inward, toward the people, faces, and shadows surrounding the case. And every new name brought with it another wave of paranoia. The sketch of a stranger. The police artist's sketch, the man in the blue swimsuit, was printed in every major newspaper. His smiling face became an icon of dread. Every beachgoer, every passerby, seemed to see him somewhere. That's him, one shopkeeper said. I saw that man near the foreshore, another claimed. But when detectives checked, the trail vanished again. What the public didn't know was that investigators had dozens of possible matches. Each one questioned, each one cleared. And yet, something about that smile in the sketch felt too familiar. Scene 2. The curious case of the postman. Then came the postman, a well-liked man in the Beaumont's neighborhood. He claimed he'd seen the children earlier than anyone else had reported. He even described them, laughing and holding hands, carefree. But his story changed slightly each time he told it. And soon, detectives began to wonder if his memory was just too perfect. Was he simply mistaken? Or was he, in some way, inserting himself into the story? Still, no proof tied him to the crime. Just another shadow, another name to file away. Scene 3. The False Prophet. In the years that followed, many would claim to know what happened. Among them, a man named Harry Phipps, a wealthy Adelaide businessman. He owned a factory near the beach, and he matched the description almost perfectly. Witnesses would later allege that Phipps had a fascination with young children and an unsettling charm. In 2013, decades later, cadaver dogs would even detect traces of human decomposition at that very site. But back in 1966, those leads never reached the surface. No warrant, no arrest, just whispers buried beneath influence, fear, and power. Scene 4. A city on edge. Adelaide was changing. Parents no longer trusted the parks, the schools, or even their neighbors. Every unfamiliar man became a suspect. Talk radio lit up with wild theories, foreign spies, child rings, satanic cults, even government cover-ups. The Beaumont's tragedy had become everyone's nightmare. But behind the panic, the police were running out of leads and out of hope. Each new suspect turned into another dead end. And still the ocean at Glenelg held its silence. Scene 5. The Parents and the Shadows. Jim Beaumont once said, "Every time we hear of a new lead, it's like losing them all over again." The weight of suspicion shifted from strangers to neighbors to anyone remotely involved. The case had created something the world wasn't ready for, a culture of fear without closure. The Beaumonts withdrew from the world entirely. Their faces, once fixtures of every front page, faded into the background of their own tragedy. The truth was now buried beneath layers of rumor, obsession, and manipulation. And somewhere in those shadows, the real story was waiting. But the deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a crime. It was a mirror reflecting everything dark about human nature. If you're following this case with us, don't forget to hit subscribe, like, and comment below. Your voice keeps this investigation alive, and your support helps us tell the stories others have forgotten. Together, we can make sure the Beaumont children are never truly lost to time. The letters, the lies, and the cruel hoax, universal, 10 to 12 minutes. As the months passed, the search for Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont yielded little more than despair. The city had moved from shock to obsession. Every whisper, every shadow on Glenelg Beach was scrutinized. And then, in 1968, 2 years after the disappearance, the Beaumonts received a letter. "I am alive. We are alive. Do not worry." It was their first hint that the children might still be alive, but it came with strings attached. Over the following weeks, letters continued. Each one was signed with a strange symbol. Each one hinted at the children's location, but never provided proof. Police investigated every lead. They checked postmarks, handwriting, and potential suspects. Each avenue led to another dead end. Sound, faint typewriter clicks, echoing footsteps. The letters became a national sensation. Newspapers published the contents, and the public hoped. The Beaumonts clung to the possibility that Jane, Arnna, and Grant might still be alive. But with each passing day, the hope was twisted into torment. Scene shift, the hoax revealed. Eventually, the letters were revealed to be a hoax. The author, a local man seeking attention, had no connection to the children. No answers, no closure. For the Beaumont family, it was devastating. What had begun as hope became heartbreak all over again. Imagine the weight of believing your children are alive, only to have that dream ripped away. The cruelty of the hoax left scars that would never heal. Police frustration. Law enforcement had done everything in their power. Search parties, interviews, sketches, even canvassing the entire region. Yet the hoax letters exposed the limits of their control. Every false lead undermined public confidence. Every dead end left families, officers, and the nation questioning. How could something so? Scene shift. Media frenzy. The newspapers had a field day. Headlines screamed, "Beaumont children alive?" Letters stir hope. Hoax revealed. family betrayed by false claims. The public watched, argued, and debated. The children became symbols of innocence lost and the terrifying uncertainty of life. The hoax letters didn't just destroy hope. They changed the case forever. They reminded the world that in mysteries like this, not every clue is truth. Scene shift, the emotional toll. For Jim and Nancy Beaumont, every passing day without answers was torture. They moved through the motions of life, haunted by letters that promised everything and delivered nothing. Every lead became another wound, another reminder that the children they loved might never be found. By 1968, the disappearance had entered a new, darker phase, one filled with deception, lies, and the haunting knowledge that some mysteries may never be solved. If this story captivates you, subscribe, like, and comment below. Every interaction helps us keep the memory of Jane, Arnna, and Grant alive, and supports the continued investigation into mysteries that refuse to die. The suspects emerge, faces of suspicion and obsession. By late 1966, the disappearance of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont had grown from a local tragedy into a national obsession. Every lead, every shadow, every whisper was scrutinized, and slowly, names began to surface. Faces appeared, some innocent, some terrifying. Scene 1. The man in the blue swimsuit. The elusive man, first seen with the children, became the focal point of suspicion. Composite sketches circulated across newspapers, yet no one could identify him. Police interviewed dozens of potential matches, strangers, locals, and travelers. Despite hundreds of interviews, the man seemed to vanish from existence, leaving nothing but a memory in the minds of witnesses. Scene 2. The neighbor and local figures. As investigators dug deeper, neighbors and local men were questioned. One man, a factory worker living near Glenelg, matched some witness descriptions. Others had minor criminal records, while some had entirely innocent lives, yet suspicion lingered. The media began labeling anyone remotely connected to the area as a possible suspect. Families whispered, children were kept indoors, and fear became a constant companion. In cases like this, suspicion alone can ruin lives. And Adelaide became a city where shadows were watched more closely than the streets themselves. Scene 3. Theories multiply. The police explored every possible angle. Abduction by strangers, revenge against the Beaumont family, organized rings or traffickers, even ritualistic or cult involvement. Each theory carried weight, but evidence remained elusive. And while the city debated, the children remained lost. The obsession with suspects shifted the focus away from the children and onto the people who might have harmed them. It was a phenomenon that haunted families, police officers, and ordinary citizens alike. Scene 4. The media amplifies fear. Newspapers thrived on the fear. Headlines screamed accusations. Letters poured in from readers claiming they had spotted the suspects. Every tip was investigated, but most ended in frustration. Yet the public's imagination was inflamed. Each man, each stranger could be the one responsible. The line between fact and rumor blurred. Every new suspect added layers to the mystery, but also to the heartbreak of the family. Scene 5. The family strain. For Jim and Nancy Beaumont, this wave of suspicion brought little comfort. Every new suspect felt like a mockery, a reminder that the truth remained hidden. The police could only do so much. The media could do more harm than good. By the end of 1966, Adelaide had learned a chilling lesson. In a mystery like this, suspicion and obsession could grip a city as tightly as the unknown could grip a family's soul. The search for the children continued, but now, the faces in the shadows were as haunting as the silence left behind. If this story keeps you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Comment below your thoughts. Who do you think could have been involved? Every interaction helps keep the memory of Jane, Arnna, and Grant alive. False trails and frustration when every lead fades. Universal, 10 to 12 minutes. By mid-1967, the investigation into the Beaumont children's disappearance had grown exhausting. for the police, the family, and the entire city of Adelaide. Every lead was scrutinized with painstaking detail. Yet one by one, the trails crumbled. Scene 1. Witnesses and conflicting stories. Many witnesses who had initially claimed to see the children recanted or changed their stories. Some admitted confusion. Others feared retaliation for speaking out. The man in the blue swimsuit, the central figure of the investigation, remained untraceable. Every tip about his whereabouts ended in frustration. The police were left chasing shadows. Each lead felt like a thread that unraveled just as they tried to grasp it. Scene 2. Suspects cleared, suspicions persist. Some potential suspects were cleared after extensive questioning, yet public suspicion never died. Every stranger on the street became a possible abductor in the eyes of fearful citizens. Letters claiming the children were alive were investigated. None provided verifiable proof. The hoaxes and false reports drained resources and hope alike. The investigation had become a battle against uncertainty itself. It was no longer just about finding the children. It was about navigating the impossible maze of human memory, rumor, and deceit. Scene 3. The media amplifies confusion. The newspapers thrived on false leads. Sensational headlines mixed fact with conjecture, and the public struggled to discern truth from fiction. Beaumont children spotted in Outback. Mysterious stranger may hold key. Letters claim children alive in remote town. Every new sighting prompted police investigation, only to end in disappointment. Narrator, somber tone. By now, Adelaide had been gripped by fear and speculation for over a year. The community was exhausted, but the mystery only deepened. Scene 4. The emotional toll on the family. For Jim and Nancy Beaumont, each false lead was like reopening a wound. Hope surged, then crashed repeatedly. The letters, the sightings, the rumors, all left them emotionally drained. Even their friends and neighbors began to distance themselves, unsure how to cope with the unrelenting tension. It was a time when every new clue brought both promise and despair. And when it failed, the silence was deafening. Scene 5. Police frustration grows. The police faced immense pressure. Resources were stretched thin and morale dropped. Each false lead required time, manpower, and energy, yet produced nothing tangible. Detectives began to realize that the answers might not be found in Adelaide at all. Perhaps the children had been taken far away, or perhaps something even darker had occurred. By the end of this chapter in the investigation, one fact was undeniable. The Beaumont children remained lost, and the city's collective hope teetered on the edge of despair. If this story grips you, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. Every interaction helps preserve the memory of Jane, Arnna, and Grant, and keeps us exploring mysteries that refuse to fade. The investigator's dead ends. When evidence runs cold. Universal, 10 to 12 minutes. By the late 1960s, years had passed since the Beaumont children vanished. The initial wave of frantic searches, witness interviews, and media coverage had dwindled. Yet for the family, and for investigators, the disappearance remained a relentless obsession. Scene 1. Police exhaustion. Detectives faced the reality of cold evidence. Leads dried up. Witnesses moved away or passed on. The man in the blue swimsuit, the central figure, had never been identified. Every trail led to nothing. Every tip proved false, and every potential suspect slipped away. The frustration among investigators grew. It was a case without closure, a puzzle missing its key pieces. Scene 2. The impact on the family. For Jim and Nancy Beaumont, hope had become fragile. They clung to memories, photographs, and the occasional report of sightings. Yet, as years passed, the reality sank in. The case might never be solved. The children's rooms remained untouched, frozen in time. The school books, toys, and tiny clothing were constant reminders of a life that had vanished in an instant. Scene 3. Public interest wanes. Mystery remains. As the 1970s approached, public fascination diminished. Newspapers published occasional updates, often summarizing years of dead ends. Beaumont children case remains unsolved. Investigators exhaust leads in national mystery. Yet for those who remembered, the mystery was far from over. It lingered in the streets of Adelaide, in the hearts of families, and in the shadows of every beach and park. Scene 4. Cold leads and unanswered questions. Investigators reviewed every note, letter, and tip, only to find they all ended in dead ends. No concrete evidence. No suspects brought to justice. Every clue that had once sparked hope became a haunting reminder of what was lost. It was in these years that the Beaumont disappearance truly became a legend. A cautionary tale of innocence lost, questions unanswered, and time slipping away. Scene 5. Emotional toll on investigators. The officers who dedicated themselves to the case carried the weight of failure. Every unresolved lead felt like a personal loss. For years, they returned to Glenelg Beach, hoping for something new, a witness, a clue, a miracle. By this point, the Beaumont case had grown colder than the waters of the Adelaide coast. Yet the questions remained, echoing through decades. Where were Jane, Arnna, and Grant? Who had taken them? And would the answers ever be found? If this story keeps you captivated, subscribe, like, and share. Your engagement ensures that the Beaumont children's story is never forgotten, and that mysteries like this continue to be explored. The unsolved puzzle, decades of theories and speculations. By the 1980s and 1990s, the disappearance of Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont had entered the realm of legend. No new evidence had surfaced. No suspects were ever convicted. Yet the questions refused to fade. Scene 1. Early theories and speculation. Over the years, countless theories emerged. Some suggested that the children had been abducted by strangers, perhaps for ransom. Others believed a dangerous pedophile or criminal ring had taken them. Books, documentaries, and journalists dissected every detail. The man in the blue swimsuit remained a central figure in nearly every theory. Each theory carried its own chilling weight, but none offered closure. Scene 2. Investigations reopened. Periodically, police reopened the case. In 1990, renewed interest led to interviews with former witnesses, re-evaluation of old evidence, and even forensic re-examinations. Cadaver dogs were brought to the Glenelg foreshore and nearby properties. Yet, despite these efforts, the trail remained cold. The decades-old mystery refused to yield its secrets. Scene 3. Media and public fascination. The story of the Beaumont children captivated generations. Documentaries, books, and podcasts explored the case. Public fascination remained strong, fueled by the enduring questions and a haunting lack of answers. Australia's longest-running mystery. Who took the Beaumont children? Decades later, mystery still haunts Adelaide. The children became symbols of innocence lost and unanswered questions. Scene 4. Modern theories. Modern researchers proposed new angles. Some theorized organized criminal involvement. Others suggested opportunistic abduction or even accidental death followed by concealment. Even with modern technology, the evidence remained inconclusive. Every theory sparked debate. Every new claim reminded Australia that the Beaumont children's disappearance was not just a mystery. It was a cultural scar. Scene 5. The legacy of the disappearance. For the Beaumont family, life continued under the shadow of unanswered questions. For Adelaide, the beaches remained a reminder that a single day could change everything. The story had become more than a case. It was a lesson in the fragility of innocence, the limitations of human understanding, and the haunting power of unresolved mysteries. Even decades later, the questions endure. Where were Jane, Arnna, and Grant Beaumont? Who took them? And could justice ever be served? The sun set that evening in 1966, but for the Beaumont family, it never rose again. For decades, the tides have carried secrets, yet none have returned the children who vanished into thin air. Some say the case is cursed, that every lead is meant to mislead. Others believe the truth was discovered long ago and quietly buried. But the mystery of Glenelg Beach endures, as eternal as the sea itself. If you followed this far, let the silence speak to you. Share your thoughts, your theories. Maybe together, we can uncover what others could not. Don't forget to subscribe to Mystery Vault 80 for more chilling journeys into the unknown. Your voice, your curiosity, and your support keep these mysteries alive, and someday they might just help solve them. Fade out over the sound of waves, whispering the children's names. Jane, Arnna, Grant. Text appears. Vanished but never forgotten.